Hey everyone, it's Wayfy. So for my first video on YouTube, I want to talk about Batman the video game for the NES. I heard this is a very difficult game, but how difficult is it? For those who might not be familiar, the game is loosely based on the Batman movie from 1989 directed by Tim Burton. And I say loosely as I watched that movie in preparation for this video, and I can confidently say that this game has very little to do with that movie, so you do not need to be familiar with the film to get into this game. To show how separate the game is from the movie, villains from the comics such as Killer Moth and Firebug appear as bosses, but they are not in the film. The game was developed by Sunsoft, who also made a different version of the game for the Sega Genesis, which, from what I looked up, is more accurate to the film. But since I don't have it, I can't speak on that, and it's not a port of the NES version, being a totally different game. And let me also mention I'm not from the generation this game came from. I was born in the mid to late 90s, so this game was way before my time. But thanks to creators like James Rolfe, aka the Angry Video Game Nerd, and among other retro game reviewers, I've developed a love for retro games and an appreciation for the generations before me. Now that we got that out of the way, let's play! Ooh, dark and brooding. If you let the game sit during the title, it will play the intro. None of it has any bearing on the game itself and it's just context. The Gotham City Festival is preparing for its 200th anniversary, the Joker has unleashed poisonous gas and terror onto the city, Vicky Vale, a photojournalist, is investigating the crime and has been rescued by the Caped Crusader himself. Batman recognizes the Joker as the one who killed his parents, and so he will get his revenge and save the city. Again, this has no real bearing on the game itself, as when it comes to these older games, the story isn't what you play them for. It's all about the gameplay. Being a side-scrolling action game, you use the D-pad to move left and right as well as duck, the A button to jump, and the B button to punch. The start button switches out your weapons, and the select button pauses. Depending on how hard you press the A button, Batman will jump higher or lower. You also get a wall jump similar to another NES game called Ninja Gaiden. Controlling Batman feels pretty good, because of how pressing the A button determines how high or low you jump. Batman has a good amount of weight to him. Punching enemies is fun, and the weapons are very useful when punching isn't ideal, like these guys in the first stage. Using what's called the dirk is what I found to be the most effective against them. The level design in the first stage though, I'm a bit mixed on. In stage 1-1 you have platforms like these that don't lead to anywhere, and in stage 1-2 you have two paths. One where you can wall jump your way up and not take damage, and the other where these enemies are shooting fire. I can appreciate the open-endedness, but there's no penalty or immense reward for using either one, so it feels aimless. It looks like it's trying for a non-linear level design, but why? And the hard way isn't that hard if you time your attacks right, it's just more time consuming. But the enemies drop pickups like ammo, hearts, and B tokens for your score when you defeat them. Could that be why? The rest of the game's stages follow a more linear path. It's just the first stage that feels aimless to me. I'm not saying it's bad, it's just something I was feeling while playing through it. The graphics in the game are pretty cool. I don't think it would be considered one of the best looking games on the system, but it does Batman justice with dark and stylish visuals that feel right at home in his universe, with some colorful levels breaking up the darkness. The music in the game is alright to be honest. I know Sunsoft games have a reputation for awesome music on the NES. I have played some of their other games like Gremlins 2 and Journey to Silius, and I agree. But the music in Batman was just average in my opinion. None of the songs really stood out to me. The first few stages I found to be quite easy. Nothing super challenging, but still entertaining. The enemies weren't that hard to defeat. The first boss fight with Killer Moth was easy, and the platforming and environmental hazards weren't too bad. So far, I'm not seeing the challenge that this game is known for. But I'm gonna eat those words as it's only gonna get harder from here. Let me make this clear. I don't hate hard games. I beat God of War, Chains of Olympus, and Ghost of Sparta on God mode. I beat Devil May Cry 3 on normal, which was the hard mode of the Japanese version, though that might not be much of a flex there, but hey, it was hard for me. And I'm a big fan of the Soulsborne games, even though I'm currently stuck in spots of those games. But regardless, I really enjoy all of those. So I'm not someone who hates a game just because it's hard. And it could very well be that I'm just bad at the game, so please bear this in mind with what I have to say from here on out. But Batman on the NES is one of a hard game. But after completing stage 2-3, you have this boss fight with what the manual calls machine intelligence. Despite the boss being stationary, it's quite hard to fight when you don't know how to beat it. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty stumped during this fight when I first played this game. After watching some walkthroughs, I saw how to fight it, and I felt like an idiot. You take your spear gun and shoot out those lasers shooting at you at the beginning of the fight while dodging its laser blasts. Then you will wall jump and stand on this platform and time your shots with your spear gun to shoot out that light, as those little drops will cancel your blast, which is annoying. When that's defeated, the laser barrier will deactivate and the final light will then transform into a 3-headed laser and shoot at you intermittently. Go back to the position you started the fight at, and again, time your shots so that your spear gun blast doesn't get cancelled by those drops, and when the final light is visible, the 3-headed laser will pop out to shoot at you again and again. Considering it's about timing, you better get this down or else you'll be wasting ammo. But there you go, you win. Kind of a pain, but this was easy compared to what's in store moving forward. On to stage 3-1. This is when the game started to test my patience. We get introduced to these toad-like enemies called Jaders. These guys suck! When I first started fighting them, I kept trying to time myself to punch them out so I don't have to use weapons, but it just seemed like there wasn't any real pattern. Sometimes they jump away from you or jump towards you, so it's like, where do I position myself so I can safely punch them? And if you're not careful, you can waste ammo killing these things. Sometimes I get super lucky and take these guys out without taking too much damage, but then there are moments where I just die and die, weapons or not. And if that wasn't bad enough, depending on how far you left the place where you found them while fighting and defeating them, they respawn! Yeah! Previously, it was more of a minor annoyance when it happened, as again, the enemies weren't that hard before. But with these guys, you have a hell of a time fighting just one. This is not the kind of enemy you want to respawn. It just felt like pure luck when I originally got past this level. Seriously, screw those Jaders. Screw them to In stage 3-2, we get some more environmental hazards. The previous stage wasn't too bad with them, but here, when you go through the level like how you would expect, there are propellers there to hurt you. And sometimes when you think there's a safe platform, there's a mine waiting for you, or an enemy shooting at you. It's like you can't catch a break. And this is a me thing, as I know what's below me is dangerous or there's an enemy at a certain spot, and what do? Walk right into it. Because of the way the level is structured, I go about it in a way that I feel it's how I'm supposed to go, and when I get hurt, I get mad at myself for constantly falling for the same pitfalls due to my limitations as a player. And don't even get me started again about those Jaders. You got environmental hazards and then Jaders on top of that? That's plain cruel. Oh, and also there are these enemies called mobile trackers. In the first few stages, these enemies aren't that bad. But in this stage, and in the later levels, they're placed in spots that make already hard situations even harder. Places where I feel I can finally calm down or get a fighting chance, but there they are, rushing at me, blocking my way, and getting my butt killed. You don't have to be ducking to punch them, though I still do it by instinct. But if your punch timing is off by just a microsecond, you'll take damage and fly back. You could be mashing the B button, but if there's that very slight pause in your punching, any enemy that makes contact will make you take damage and fly back, which sucks! In stage 3-3, this is where, aside from the mobile trackers being a pain in the we add these new enemies I think are called EEVs. They move back and forth and shoot these big fireballs at you. With how the mobile trackers are positioned, it's like they're purposely setting you up to get hit. Even if you manage to beat the mobile tracker, you still need to time your jump or duck to avoid getting hit by its blaster and launch a projectile attack. One helpful thing that took me off guard is that you can despawn one of them. Yeah, at this point in the stage you can clearly see the EEV right there. But if you back up even just a bit, poof! It's gone! It can still spawn back, but at least you can despawn it, which helps a little. But since the enemies respawn, if you fall to a lower level, you have to fight the enemies you defeated all over again. It's like, geez, can't this game let up? I'm already frustrated enough! I know that Batman is hard, but good gravy! Also, while wall jumping at this point in the stage, you have to time your jumps and be mindful of your position as there are these rotating gears and enemies shooting fire at you. That kept my stomach in a tight knot. Just imagine the frustration of dealing with all that junk before, only to die at this point of the stage, and have to do that all over again just to try again. But the boss fight after this stage with the Electrocutioner is thankfully not that hard as long as you use the Batarang. Isn't that amusing? The levels at this point have been very challenging, but the boss fight here is kind of easy. You're still going to take some hits, but it's doable. Now in stage 4-1, we face a mirage of mobile home mines, mobile trackers, drop claw bombs, and those godforsaken Jaders. I'm all for a game to not mess around and keep me on my toes, but this is madness! Though it wouldn't have been as bad if it weren't for those Jaders. I did eventually learn a strategy of fighting them that worked. Have them appear partially at the edge of the screen, and just use a projectile like your spear gun or your dirk and shoot at them until they die. But again, be mindful of your timing or else you'll waste ammo. And also, don't spawn them again! The strategy works, but it brings the game's pace down. Stage 4-2 had some annoyances. The mobile trackers, the enemy shooting fire, and those rotating gears made it difficult, but it was kind of a breather at least. Thank goodness. Stage 4-3 was when I really considered throwing the towel. From those rail runners at the start, which I later found out I didn't have to fight them, I only did it because, again, out of instinct. But the worst part was when I got to this point with these small conveyor belt platforms. With a bed of fire down below, and with needing to wall jump on the bigger platforms, and some of them having mobile trackers on them, this section is from hell! So much frustration because of the small moving platforms and needing to wall jump made me very anxious, as I didn't want to fall nor get hit by either an enemy or the laser blast that comes out here, so I wanted to jump up and get onto stationary ground, but those mobile trackers were in the way. And if I touch them, I get hurt and knocked back and fall to the bottom of the level and have to start over or die in the fire. On more than a few occasions, I just let the fire kill me as I didn't want to bother working my way up. I'm just gonna die and take damage anyway, so I might as well just start the level over. I was re-evaluating my life during that pause. But finally, after what felt like an eternity, I got past that part, only to find new challenges! Another mobile tracker in an unfortunate place and an EEV shooting at me, and after that, another, and then 4 rows of fire shooting enemies, and mobile trackers in unadvantageous places. Don't! And after getting past those, a drop claw dropping bombs and 2 Night Slayers. When I first saw those, I was like, finally some manageable enemies. But look at this! The Night Slayers take 1,000,000 hits to kill! And with the drop claw dropping bombs that hone in on you, and my low health, I was like, no! I'm not gonna let this game beat me again! So I stuck it out, and finally got to the level's boss, the dual container alarm, on just 1 last bar of health. And it killed me. I was on my last life after learning how to fight it. The battle didn't seem that bad, but then I died again. And then, the unthinkable happened. I had to play Stage 4-3 all over again! If you have extra lives, you can repeat the boss stages, but if you lose all your lives during them and continue, you have to play the previous stage all over. But with the stage's small moving platforms and difficult enemies, I finally reached my breaking point and just had to stop playing. I was fully ready to just give up, but I didn't want to make this video without playing the game to the end. If other people played and beat this game, why can't I? So after a few days of taking a break and watching some guides on YouTube about beating this game, I decided to try again with Game Genie's Infinite Lives code as my safety net. Let's give this game another round! Spoiler, there's a massive flaw with my plan. So I played through the game and get... Oh, just a moment. Put the code back in and... Okay. So I played through the game again feeling just a bit more confident, knowing I wouldn't have to repeat a stage if I died during a boss fight. But those hard moments I talked about weren't any easier. Being so eager to get through these stages led me to get hit more often, which is my fault, but can you blame me for my lack of patience? This game has tested me enough! It's not like I could pick and choose the stages I want to play. I have to play the game from start to finish in one sitting. Dang, how people got by without the ability to save their games I'll never know. It's not every game of that era had a save feature. That must have been rough. But surely I got back to the dual container alarm, and I defeated it. And I could finally move on to the last stage. The Cathedral. Stage 5-1 didn't seem that bad at first, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy. Aside from the usual annoying enemies being mobile trackers, guys shooting fire, and rotating gears in the way, there were also enemies called javelins. Timing, like before, is everything. Timing when you land an attack, avoiding hitting the gears, as any pixel of Batman touching the gears will hurt him. And in some spots, there's no way of not getting hit. I watched a walkthrough about how you can despawn a javelin during this part, but again, avoiding the gear for me was challenging. But I didn't care as long as I got to the fight with the Joker, as I had the Infinite Lives safety net. After the pure hell these past few levels put me through, I was so hyped to finally fight the Joker. Haha! Made it! But before I could fight the Joker, I had to fight Firebug. They just couldn't resist another hurdle, could they? The manual says he's Joker's bodyguard, and this guy's tough. You have to properly time your jumping to dodge his blasts and use your batarangs when he's in position. Otherwise, you'll take damage. And he has a rapid-fire punch that will drain your health till you die. Considering how harsh the previous stage had been, I felt good that I didn't have to play through that again if I died. This is where I ran into that flaw. You see, to get more ammo, you have to get pickups from defeated enemies. You can farm pickups by beating up the bombs dropped by the drop claws when they're in levels, and respawning enemies if you must. But you can't get more ammo in the boss levels as far as I know. And so, I kept restarting at the beginning of this boss fight and kept wasting my ammo as I haven't had the practice to figure out the timing, and also I was just eager to finally fight this guy and get to the Joker and finally be done with this game due to all the stress it put me through. And so, I used up all my ammo and was pretty much defenseless against Firebug, and even if I did beat Firebug with just my fists, I would be completely helpless in my actual fight with the Joker, as I know he's insanely difficult. The thought of playing through the previous level, let alone the whole game again, filled me with anxiety. But since I had no ammo left, and had no other way of stocking up more ammo without needing to play the entire game over without Game Genie, having to put up with the jaders, the propellers, the gears, the fire, the mobile trackers, the EEVs, needing to climb my way back up and fight all those annoying enemies again when they respawn when I inevitably fall to the lower level and have to climb my way back up, all of that, and the fact I simply wasn't having any fun with any of it, the line in the sand has been drawn, my white flag raised, my cards folded, and I accept defeat. Batman the video game for Nintendo, you win! The game's immense difficulty in its later stages, needing to replay them when you lose all your lives in the boss stages, and there being no other way to get more ammo without playing through those frustrating levels again as far as I know, this game's challenge is just too much for me to handle, and I have to stop. This game is so much harder than Dark Souls, God of War, and Devil May Cry put together! While I didn't get to the Joker himself, nor beat him, me reaching Firebug I felt was good enough for me to lay this crusade to rest. I may not have gotten my medal for beating Batman for Nintendo, but I got far, and I did my best. I know that this game has a strong following, and again, all these complaints I have just boiled down to me not being good at the game, and I don't want to come across as an angry reviewer. I didn't even draw angry expressions from my character here. I just didn't expect this game to be this challenging for me. I'm all for challenge, but this game was too much! I felt like my thumbs simply moved too fast for Batman to keep up at times because of my anxiety, and so I would get hit and take damage constantly, and die, and die, and die. And that's entirely on me. Instead of enjoying the gameplay and its level design, all I wanted was to get to the end of each level. And that's not how you should go about playing a game. You should enjoy it, difficulty and all. But that wasn't the case for me with Batman. The first few stages were fun enough, but then it just went downhill from there. I know plenty of people have beaten this game and love it, but I'm not one of them, sadly. I'm sorry. So overall, this game isn't for me. It's got stylish 8-bit visuals and solid feeling controls, and when the game isn't annoying, it's fun. But the difficulty makes this game hard for me to recommend to most people. And since it hasn't had a re-release, you have to have a console that can play the original cartridge. Whether it's the original NES, the top loader, or a clone console. The game isn't pricey at all for a retro game, so if you think you're up for the challenge, then by all means take the plunge. The game is worth owning for hardcore Batman fans, retro game collectors, and anyone looking for a hardcore challenge because you're gonna get it. It's not a terrible game. But when people said it was hard, they were not joking! For everyone else, I'd say just stick with the Batman Arkham trilogy. I really hate to start my YouTube journey off so critically, but I made plans to make a video about this game and I was gonna see it to the end. But what I didn't plan for was the game being so challenging for me. Let's hope when I get another video made that doesn't happen again. I hope I didn't jinx myself by saying that. And if you played this game and even beat it, feel free to roast me in the comments for my awful playing of it, or maybe help me out and tell me what I'm doing wrong. I would really appreciate it, as again, it's not a bad game, I'm just bad at it. And it pains me to be such a downer for a game a lot of people like. But I hope my video was at least an interesting take on this game. Until my next video, take care everyone! Oh, and Happy New Year! Video over.